Well, everybody, hi, welcome back to another episode of Whoa. I'm Trevor, that is Shawn, and we do this, we go back and forth, and whoever's turn it was last time is not the turn this time. That's kind of how turns go, so...
I did last time.
I thought I did it last. Oh, that's right. That's right, it is my turn. So, we reach into the box, and we try to find ourselves a randomness Calvin ball. So that means that today, ladies and gentlemen, today's episode, or this month's episode of is all about one of the greatest comedy forces of all time, Monty Python. Yes. Monty Python's Flying Circus. So, Monty Python. Monty Python is definitely, I'm responsible for that. I'm responsible for bringing Python to our little world, and I think I'll tell that story now because you are not interrupting me. So, for reasons I can't imagine. So, my father is British, and there are two very big...
Trevor's favorite sentence.
Oh my God. That's not my favorite sentence.
It's the one you've said the most often in our entire friendship. Really? Other than like, shut up, Shawn.
I don't think that's true, but anyway, I just feel like you're jealous. I feel like you wish your dad was my dad. And British.
I mean, my hair would be cooler.
Very true. But yeah, my dad is responsible for two very big things in my life. That's Looney Tunes and Monty Python. And the reason it got there was almost the same, because I'm sitting in front of the TV watching something way too much. In this case, it was originally it was Mr. Rogers, and I'm like going into age 6, still watching Mr. Rogers, and my dad's like, you gotta move on, dude. So he put Looney Tunes in front of me. And was like, and he said, if you're gonna watch this sort of thing, you ought to watch the best of it.
Is that why you're such an asshole? Because your dad made you move on from Mr. Rogers?
Maybe.
Just imagine if you had just kept with that.
I mean,
you'd be such a nice guy.
Mr. Rogers is still one of my heroes. And also, the one thing I can't resist is if I go out anywhere and there's like a Mr. Rogers keychain or anything, I have to buy it.
Yeah, I got you that mug that changes colors.
That's right.
I always buy you Mr. Rogers stuff when I see it. I just don't see it often enough.
Well, that's another discerning person who owns their own IP. Not every product gets a Mr. Rogers logo. We discern. But anyway, so it was Mr. Rogers, and he put Looney Tunes on. He's like, if you're going to watch this sort of thing, he meant kid stuff.
Was that a callback to the first episode?
It might be. He said, if you're going to watch this sort of thing, you ought to watch the best of it. And when I was 13 or 14, I had been obsessed for a couple of years with SNL and Laugh-In. Laugh-In was also a big thing.
Oh my God, I loved Laugh-In.
Nick at Night, right?
Yeah. Sack it to me, sack it to me, sack it to me, sack it to me.
So I had gotten really big in that kind of stuff, and I was getting into sketch comedy. And my dad, I guess, got tired of me renting the same 3 Saturday Night Live best of
Kids
things.
are awful.
We are.
You know how many times I've seen The Land Before Time? Holy shit.
Probably way more than you should have.
My little brother would watch both Ewoks movies back to back.
There's more than one?
Yes. There's 2.
Oh.
We had them on one VHS tape, and he would watch the entire tape every single day. Wow. And you know what? He's now a Trump supporter, and I still prefer that over the way it was with the Ewoks movies.
I don't know what you're really saying there, but what was I trying to say? So my dad, again, had those famous words, if you're going to watch this sort of thing, you ought to watch the best of it. So he put Python in my lap. He said it was the Christmas that I turned 14. Well, I had turned 14.
How fucked up is it that to realize that Python and Laugh-In were being made at roughly the same time?
And Laugh-In was easily an answer to Python and saying, like, we need to make the American version of this without understanding what Python was doing.
Yeah, I mean, the American version of Python being Laugh-In is basically like Porta Potty being an American TARDIS.
Yeah, I don't know what an American version of Python would be. I think maybe the closest thing would probably be Mr. Show in terms of influence, because everybody loves Mr. Show. Like, it's like it influenced a generation. So I think maybe that, but anyway, Python was my dad saying, if you're going to watch this, watch the best of it. And it was a Christmas that I would turn 14, and it was the Dead Parrot sketch. It was, that's the one you got to watch first.
Not me.
What was the first one?
You started me off on the first episode. The first Python sketch I remember was Ken Clean Air System.
I don't think that's the first.
I think it is. I know that Bicycle Repairman is the first episode. Also a brilliant sketch.
And the name of that episode is Wither Canada. They called it Wither Canada.
The Lodge.
The Bicycle Repairman is so great because it's, the joke with that, we'll show clips from it, but the joke is that I love the way that sketch, showed me, like, there's certain words you have to reveal certain things on. And so the sketch starts with Michael Palin dressed as Superman, and he's doing this, the Superman pose where he's gazing over and you hear him talking about, this man is Mr. F.G. Superman. No different than any other law-abiding citizen. And then you see him walking among all the other Supermen.
Yeah.
And if they had cut there just one word earlier, it would have been too much, and he wouldn't have laughed as hard. But no different than any other law-abiding citizen. They cut to all of them, and then it becomes the joke is that he's the superhero because he can repair bicycles.
Yes. And he's the only one that's not dressed as a Superman. He's got his mustache and his overalls and his coveralls.
He's the only one who doesn't speak like a hero.
Yeah. Everybody else has this super cheesy bad American accent.
Whoa, bicycle repairman. Thank goodness you've come.
Some day's work, Squire.
Bicycle repairman. Oh, and it goes off. I think that was also the episode where the sketch with Picasso painting on a bicycle during a bike race.
Yeah.
Remember that one? Yeah. So Ken Clean Air System is the first one you actively remember.
Ken Clean Air System is the one, like, you can watch something and there's a moment where it clicks and you're like, yep, I'm in love with this.
Yeah.
Ken Clean Air System was the moment for me. We had watched stuff prior to that, and maybe, maybe it was even a few episodes in, but there was something in, I can tell you the exact moment. It was every morning for breakfast.
Ken gets up at 3:00 and goes back to bed again because it's far too early.
But it was him putting the plate of breakfast under the chair and locking himself in the cupboard.
Well, he's had a lot of mental difficulties with his breakfast, but this is largely due to a small particle of brain lodged in his skull. Once I remove that, it'd be perfectly all right.
But yeah, that's where it hit me. I just went like, click.
I remember the line that you loved the most from that sketch for a long time was the manager saying, well, great thing about Ken is he's almost totally stupid.
Also, my other favorite moment from that sketch is, and this is very visual, I'm sorry those of you listening on the podcast, but it's, it's Ken jogging.
Oh, yeah.
Comes up to a car.
Yeah, he goes the other way. He doesn't know what to do.
So yeah, and it wasn't that like British humor had an inherent appeal to me even, because I remember a couple years earlier I had seen splitting hairs in the theater.
Yeah.
And my only takeaway from that movie, other than I did not enjoy it. I
Really?
didn't find it to be funny. And my only takeaway was like, ooh, Catherine Zeta-Jones, I'll remember this name. Oh yes.
Yeah.
And ass.
Best, and later dubbed the best ass in Hollywood.
And that was my overriding memory of that movie. To this day, I haven't seen it again. I'm
Really?
sure I would love it because it's British humor. I get that now. But literally the only thing I remember from that movie is Catherine Zeta-Jones' ass.
There was a Python kind of jab at, because it was Eric's movie, at John. I don't know if you remember this. In the credits, it said, "And introducing John Cleese."
Is that a jab?
Well, it was a joke. Anyway.
I've seen lots of stuff do that. Like, what is it? Raising Hope.
Oh, right.
It says, and introducing Cloris Leachman in every
that's
episode.
Right. That's right. Oh, yeah. Well, maybe they, I don't know.
Who just recently passed away.
Yes. Rest in peace. Very funny. Bruja. That's my horse noise. My horse whinny.
Oh, that's not good.
I'm not Mel Blanc. I can't do it, man. So yeah, Python. Now,
No, we should address the elephant in the room, which is that when you say Monty Python to an American, they want to pronounce the O more, first of all.
that's true. Yeah.
Python.
Python. And that is normally
That's like saying Florida.
Florida.
But when you talk about Monty Python to an American, they're going to inevitably think, oh yeah, man, Holy Grail.
Not a bad movie, but by no means all that they're capable of.
No.
No. Python is, we talked about Hitchhikers a few months ago, and that's another one of those comedy things that, like, you know, it's not just a TV show, it's not just a movie, it's not just a book, it's not just an album, it's not just a CD-ROM game, it's everything. And they figure out a new way to exist in that media.
But I mean, I haven't done any polling on this, but I think that if you did a poll of 100 Americans who can quote at least 5 lines from Holy Grail.
There wouldn't be many.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty. Holy Grail is very popular.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a flesh wound, and
Yeah.
you know, all the more popular lines.
Yeah.
If you find people that have a tendency to quote that or own a Holy Grail t-shirt, and then start talking to them about blancmanges,
Yeah.
I guarantee you 99 of them will have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. Right. And that's what's interesting about the thing that I've always wondered and I've never heard answered about Python was, you know, there was no way to like now the idea of a sketch comedy group graduating from one medium and doing a movie like Broken Lizard or whatever, the idea of a troupe where they're doing the movie themselves and they're playing all the characters and da-da-da, and even things like Gilliam's animation, you know, and other stuff. To me, what I've never heard really addressed is that, you know, it was just the show before the movies. So it makes me wonder, why, and I'm glad they did it, but it makes me wonder why they were so like, this has to be like the show. It has to be sketches, even though it's a movie. We have to have Gilliam's animation. It has to be, there's major elements in the show that were formed in the show that are Python regular thing, you know, elements that started in the show that they kept when they went to Holy Grail, that I wonder, because there was no rule book for how you did that kind of thing back then. And it's just, I love that they were like, well, we need Gilliam's animation because it was in the show. Well, we need us to do the parts because we did the parts in the show.
I mean, I think it was probably just like, well, we should do a Monty Python movie.
I've never seen any, as much as interviews as I read, and I've never once seen any interview where they're like, well, we wanted to make it like the show. Well, we had to make, they never talk about the Python brand. The only person who would ever say things like, well, that's not really Python, was Terry Jones. But even then, the other Pythons professed that they didn't know what he was talking about half the time.
Yeah.
You know?
But I mean, I just feel like they were probably just making it in the way they were used to making things. I don't think there was probably even a conscious conversation of like, well, we need this thing and this thing and this. Like, they don't have the It's guy.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have...
They have
the opening.
They have a few references to the opening is in Meaning of Life on the end credits, as the TV floats off into the thing, into the nether world or the whatever. And
that movie is a big departure.
In some ways, in other ways, it's not, because it's a sketch film, which they tried to resist the last two movies that they did.
Life of Brian is very much a more straightforward narrative.
That's the one that Cleese and a lot of them have said, if you have to pick one thing to judge all of Python by, let it be Life of Brian.
And that's fair, because unlike most Americans, I find Life of Brian to be vastly superior to Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah.
Vastly. Especially given the end of Holy Grail.
It might not be funnier. It
might not be funny. I enjoy it more. And, I feel like Holy Grail and Blazing Saddles have one big thing in common, which is they both feel like they didn't know how to end their movies.
Yeah.
And so they just go for a fourth wall breaking meta ending that falls flat for me in both cases.
Yeah, Eric Idle has said that his daughter, the one thing she's never forgiven him for in his career is that ending. She goes, Dad, you made the worst ending to a movie that could have been amazing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, we thought it was funny. It wasn't funny, Dad.
I agree.
I think it's funny in the writer's room as a joke. That would be funny if we did it that way. And I remember being a kid thinking like, yeah, that is cool. But like you said,
the execution was
the older I get, the less happy I am about that ending.
Yeah.
I will tell you this.
Because I forgot that about Blazing Saddles. Was it Blazing Saddles? No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
Yes,
it was Blazing Saddles.
I forgot that about Blazing Saddles until I watched it again recently. And then I was like, it's the Holy Grail ending.
Yep.
And I was very disappointed.
It is interesting that, I don't know if it's interesting, but I wasn't aware how bad an ending that was for many years.
Of course not.
To me, it was just a Python ending.
Yeah.
But again, when we were talking a few months ago about how
perfectly adequate way to end an episode of Flying Circus.
Or a sketch or a side of your album.
Yeah.
But it's a movie.
Yeah.
You got to actually have an ending.
It's a feature film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't crap out on that.
But Life of Brian does an amazing job.
That ending is great.
Does an amazing job, not only with the ending, but of maintaining the sketch feel while telling a single overarching story.
And also something that Python got a lot better at, and it helped.
And it has more penis than any other Python.
Yeah, there's that too. But one thing that they got a lot better at by the time they got to the movies, and that I think this had a lot to do with the fact that they switched from having directors versus them directing their own stuff themselves, was they, especially the two Terrys, they realized that if we're...
I'm sorry.
What?
I just jumped to Key and Peele. The two Terrys.
Oh, yeah.
We gonna get us some Terrys.
I gotta tell you, that was the first. That was it had been a while since I'd seen a sketch comedy show where I was like, "This is great."
Oh yeah,
this is great. So Python again. Python is such a high watermark for sketch, but fucking Key and Peele, dude.
Key and Peele might be the best sketch show to come out of the States
for sure. It definitely is the best 2-man act I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, Chappelle's Show might edge it out. I'd have to rewatch Chappelle's Show, but in terms of like structuring and callback,
and also every sketch that Chappelle Show did looked like a Chappelle Show
the
sketch.
Entirety of the last season, interstitials of Key and Peele leading up to a callback to the first episode.
That was interesting. Yeah.
That was brilliant. They're just, the interstitials are all them driving.
Yep. You don't know where they're driving.
Then at the end, they just go to a big deserted area and they go, I said,
bitch.
I fucking lost it.
Yeah, that was great. It was one of the best callbacks ever. And also the best part about it is that you don't even know that they're them for the first few of them.
Yeah.
You think, oh, maybe it's just two sketches.
Well, because it's the interstitial that in earlier seasons was them on stage in front of an audience.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They replaced that with them in the car driving and like having their conversation.
I was starting to say something about Python, but that might be a Python influence, because I know that they were influenced on
kind
Python.
of what I was saying is like that.
They were very influenced about making the two Terrys. They were very interested in like, well, if we're going to parody a Bible epic, we have to shoot it in Tunisia, where they shoot these things. We need to get the fucking lenses that they shoot it with opulently. If we're going to have a Jesus Christ character, we can't have one of us play him. It has to be an actor.
But Terry, the money. No, we have a Beatle.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's another thing too.
George was a big part of Python.
They called him the patron saint of Life of Brian. He was I mean, if you love Life of Brian and you hate the Beatles, you're in quite a pickle, because you owe George Harrison a debt.
Yeah.
You know? So they like that. To me, the best example of them making a really perfect parody of something, only to, smack it out of your hand like it's a drink, and all of a sudden it becomes Python again, is the Sermon on the Mount sketch. And you see it's beautifully shot. I mean, it's Oscar worthy.
The only actual Jesus you see in the movie.
Yeah. And an actor, his name's Ken Colley, and he's up there and he's doing the actual Sermon on the Mount. They're not Python jokes. And for about 20 seconds, you're like, oh my God, this is an actual Bible epic. And it's backing away, and there's, his voice starts to go out, and you realize how far you are, and you hear the fucking wind, and there's real like ambiance for a second. And then it turns back into Python. Speak up! Quiet, man. We're like, on to your thing. And it's all of a sudden pepper pot voices and shut up, big nose.
Now, you're the one that's read all the books on the Python and all the behind the scenes stuff that I've always really loved Python, but I never went in for the behind the scenes stuff on those for whatever reason.
I think honestly, that's the same, that dynamic. I've never really looked into the history of the Beatles, because I have a friend who knows everything about them. And if I want to know something, I just ask him.
That's true. And they cross over, as we just discussed.
Yes.
But no, the thing about Brian is it always seemed to me like the impetus or the seed for it was probably like, he was just one guy that was nailed up there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other people nailed up. What the fuck did they do?
I'll tell them.
Why does nobody tell their stories? That seems like a good starting point to write something like Life of Brian.
It being Python, of course, it's all based on a joke. Everything is based on it. So when they were touring and doing press for Holy Grail, somebody in the press and the audience said, "What's your next film going to be?" And Eric Idle just quipped, "Jesus Christ, Lust for Glory." And it got a huge laugh, to the point where, like, many cities later, the Pythons were saying it among themselves as a joke. And then one day it's just like, why don't we bloody write that?
So that's like if the Beatles' third album had been called Arthur.
What's that hairstyle you call Arthur? So then that's how that started. They wanted to make that thing. And what's interesting that I learned in reading about how they made it, because you think, that the Pythons all, that they're known for not always agreeing. But the one thing they all agreed on was what they wanted to say about religion. And what was funny is that they all went away in their little corners, their little writing groups, Terry and Mike, John and Graham, Eric by himself, Terry J by himself. And they all just wrote. And when they all came back and did like a normal Flying Circus meeting, they had funny stuff. But the one thing that they kept realizing is that, well,
we're all saying the same thing.
Every time we put Jesus in it, we're making jokes, and it doesn't really work. It doesn't work to have Jesus be like, hello, or nudge, nudge, and all. Like, that's why Jesus is untouched in the movie.
And they're establishing that Brian isn't Jesus.
Right. And also,
Jesus is there. He's over here. He's in this scene. You see Jesus. Please don't get mad at us about this being Jesus. Oh, well, that didn't work.
and that's what's really funny about it is that the legendary it was called Friday Night, Saturday Morning. It was a show that they were on. It was Michael and John talking to.
Sounds
Yeah.
like the Britishest name for a talk show ever.
Especially one that's going to be played at 11 o'clock and end at 1 in the morning. Well, let's just call it what it bloody is. But it was John and Michael, and they're debating the Malcolm Muggeridge, who was a religious writer. He was a writer at the time, then he became religious, and the Bishop of Southwark.
Ugh.
And
People that become religious are the worst.
Yeah. And they're having this debate about it. And what was funny was that very thing that you're talking about, how they went to such lengths to go, no. This is Jesus. This is Brian. We're not making fun of him. We're making fun of the people that follow people blindly.
Yes.
And don't question things. And
You're all individuals.
Yes, we're all individuals.
I'm not.
But so that whole thing was established, especially in that shot. And what they didn't know, what Cleese and Palin did not know when didn't find out until after they shot the thing with them, they did see the movie, but they arrived 20 minutes late. So all throughout this thing, the Bishop and Malcolm Muggeridge are arguing with the Pythons that no, it is Jesus. We know what you're doing. We know what satire is. Stop it. We know you're making fun of Christ, and we know you're doing it through this Brian character. So they completely missed the fucking point. Like even the part where it says, no, this isn't Brian. This is they missed all that. Which is, if you think about it, kind of the premise for a Python sketch in its own right.
Yeah. A film reviewer who only caught the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Or missed the ending.
That absolutely sounds like a Python sketch.
Yes.
I didn't understand any of his motivations. He shows up, he shoots the vicar.
Yeah.
There's no reason given.
We should say that, we talked about how... We should talk about how Meaning of Life was a sketch movie, and they arrived at it being a sketch film because they'd had very bad luck because a lot of people think that Holy Grail is their first movie, and it's not. Their first movie is And Now for Something Completely Different. You know this, don't you?
Yeah.
Sure.
Does that count as a movie?
It was in theaters.
Huh.
It had a theatrical run. It was made by Victor Lowndes, who was the Hugh Hefner of England. He ran Playboy in England. And he had just watched, 3 weeks, he'd watched something like 3 weeks of Python of a Sunday, different Sundays in succession, and was like, these guys are funny. I like this. And so the reason why the sketches, like the sketches that are in that movie that they reshot are all sketches that Victor had laughed at and decided they were funny, and so that's what it wasn't. So it wasn't always the best sketches that you could necessarily for a film shoot. Again, we're talking about the medium and how you need to respect it and blah blah blah. So I wonder often if Meaning of Life was the result of them going, could we do a sketch film where we actually wrote the sketches knowing it was a film? And I would argue that no, they can't, because my big criticism with Meaning of Life is that while there are some amazing set pieces, Every Sperm is Sacred is probably, it's among some of their best stuff.
Mr. Creosote,
the liver donor, the Zulu War, well, this will just grow back again, will it? There's great individual stuff, but overall, the movie does not gel.
No,
at all.
Really. No.
And again, it's kind of a lackluster ending.
And it's again, it's them sort of trying to tell, not in the same way of Brian or even Holy Grail, but, they're trying to do sketches within sort of a framework of
something.
A subject within a certain subject.
But
it's a very broad topic.
They did do that with a couple of episodes of Flying Circus.
And you know what? Let's do that.
What?
Let's take a break real quick.
Oh, yes, I like a break.
We will let you know about some other amazing content you can listen to and or watch, and maybe get a little bit of money from some financial overlords.
Couldn't hurt.
And when we come back, let's talk more about Flying Circus, because that's really what kicked off my love for Python.
Me too.
And we started off saying everyone talks about the movies and nobody talks about Flying Circus, so let's not be those guys.
Let's not. All right. Well, when we get back from this ad, we will not be those guys anymore.
Give us money.
Yes, Mother's new improved Whizzle butter containing 10% more or less is absolutely indistinguishable from a dead crab. Remember, buy Whizzle butter and go to heaven.
I can't tell the difference between Whizzo butter and this dead crab.
Yes, we find that 9 out of 10 British housewives can't tell the difference between Whizzo butter and a dead crab.
It's true. We can't.
Yeah. You're on television, aren't you?
Yes.
With those silly women, you can't tell the difference between whiz-and butter and a dead crab.
Oh, yes. You try that around here, young man, and we'll slit your face. Yes.
And we're back. So, Trevor,
Hi.
We started off talking about Flying Circus. We talked about 2 sketches out of 6 seasons of television.
So let's talk about Flying Circus, and I'll start with the ultimate fanboy. Do you have a favorite funny line from a Flying Circus sketch?
Australia?
No, try again, but say a different place.
Oh, I thought you meant I said it badly.
It's from the Blancmange sketch.
Yes.
Mine is from the Confuse-a-Cat sketch. It's Mike and Terry play a very suburban couple, and they look out onto the lawn and they notice the cat's just sitting there, and they're worried to death because it's just been sitting there. And so they call a vet, and what eventually happens in the sketch is that the vet recommends a service called Confuse a Cat Limited, and they come and they do this really weird show, and then the cat finally gets up and walks inside, and he's cured. But before they call the service, Graham shows up as a vet. But he's basically doing the usual doctor, well, I can help you, and puffing the pipe and all that stuff. And there was something that they used to say, I don't know if it was like a thing doctors did or in melodrama or if it's just a Pythonism, but very often the doctors would often say something like, well, I'm very sorry, but you're suffering from what we call pneumonia. And, that would be the thing. And what he did, he sits down, he goes, I'm afraid that your cat is suffering from what we vets haven't found a word for. And I know it's coming every time I see that sketch, and it slays me. I laugh out loud every time. I love that line. That's like the bricks floating in the sky.
Yeah. I'm also very partial to the Yeti spotting. Well, if you've seen one Yeti, you've seen them all.
And have you seen them all?
Well, I've seen one. A picture of one. I've heard about them. Oh, no, a little one. I skipped a little one.
Yeah,
I've heard about them.
Yeah, that's right. He does. He gives up on it real quick. Like, well, little one. I've heard about him. Yeah. And then there was
it was. Have you seen many Yetis? Wow.
I've seen one.
If you've seen one Yeti, you've seen them all.
And have you seen them all? Well, I've seen one. A little one.
A picture of. I've heard about them.
That was the Blancmange one, because they tried to run that. The name of that episode was "You're No Fun Anymore," because they kept showing sketches that ended with people getting hurt and then looking up.
Wasn't the Blancmange sketch the one episode that was one sketch the whole way through?
No, and that's what I was about to say before we went to break. When we were talking about the movies, there were, if I'm not mistaken, and I probably am, but something like 3 episodes in different seasons where it was one long continuous sketch with little sub sketches in between.
Yeah.
The one that springs to mind is the cycling tour, where Michael Palin plays a cyclist who's going through the English
Europe.
countryside, and all sorts of bullshit happens to him. So yeah, they were getting, interested in extended narratives and stuff like that. But not the whole group. That was all like Mike and Terry Gilliam. I mean, Eric and Graham and John just wanted to write sketches.
I feel like you get that kind of dynamic in any group.
Yeah,
because
there's someone who's more interested in the structure.
Like you look at the Beatles, for example. You've got Paul, who's definitely the driving force behind concept albums.
Yeah.
Like
Sgt. Pepper.
Like Sgt. Pepper. You have the White Album coming from everybody just giving the fuck up and doing their own thing. Like, are we even a band? How about we just all make our own fucking things and put it on? There's too much of it. We can't agree on what to cut. Fine, 2 albums.
And how about
and then
this?
you have John going, guys, let's just fucking do a live album. And then you have Abbey Road.
And before that, they say, well, it doesn't sound like we all sat in the room together and made an album the way we used to. So let's just have one side where all the songs walk into each other, and then we'll pretend like it was this big thing that we all wrote together.
Well, I mean, Abbey Road was basically like, I think the idea was, we're under contract for another album.
Yeah.
And, our earlier albums where we just came into a room and did it and didn't do all the studio shit. Well, we cut those a lot faster. We could probably be out of each other's fucking hair a lot faster if we just recorded it live in the studio and didn't do any of the producing. We'll get Phil Spector to come in before he murders anybody and put a big wall of sound behind everything. Oh, no, that's Let It Be.
Yeah.
I meant Let It Be all along, not Abbey Road.
Well, I know what you were talking about.
Yeah. And we'll have Phil Spector come in and put a wall of sound so it sounds produced. And then he'll go murder people, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I remember also too. I hate people that say that. Why did I say that?
Because you hate yourself.
Sure.
Let's delve into that.
George Harrison did say on many occasions that he believed that the spirit of the Beatles, because Python started when they ended, the spirit of the Beatles left and went into Python.
Yeah, sure.
I buy that.
Yep.
I buy that.
Let's do it. And then, you got John leaving. Mm-hmm. So, he went full Paul, I guess.
But they did do live stuff too, Python, and they did put out albums of their live stuff, and it was, like you say, they didn't have to do much work. They just had to perform it, and they didn't write new stuff. But I'll tell you a sketch that you told me about, actually, that I watched very recently. There was an episode, and it begins, with Eric and John on set, and John's dressed as a bank robber, and they're in a lingerie shop, and Eric's behind the till, and there's also a AD, like a floor manager with like the headset on and like looking at a script, and they're just kind of looking around, and John's like, well, where is he? And it cuts to Palin and Terry J as his wife, and he's sitting there eating dinner, and he's got, oh, it's a letter from the BBC. Oh, what's that then, dear? Oh, they want me to appear on a sketch. He's like, really? Yeah, it says I'm in the shop, but I walk out and the sketch begins. And then it cuts back to them. Well, where is he? I don't know. And then he shows up, and then, he's like, oh, you better go then. Hurry up. Oh, that's what they call a walk-on. A walk-on? That's a walk-off. That's what this is. And then she puts the coat on him, and he kicks him out the door. She goes, mind you don't get seduced. And then he shows up, and then the sketch starts, and he cuts back to them and goes, Daddy's on TV. And he walks out the door. Oh, you missed it.
But yeah, I don't know. There was just, you just made me watch Python.
I don't think I had to make
you made me. You were like, you need to watch this, and you sat me down.
But how long before it took over and you saw Ken Clean Air System, or before you were like, I gotta watch this?
Oh no, I was never like. You're
never resistant.
Yeah, no, you just were recommending something to me. You had the tapes. You sat me down, you put a tape in, we watched it, we laughed, and then, we were insufferable to everyone around us for the rest of our lives.
We did actually. We would perform the parrot sketch downtown Sarasota to strangers.
Yes,
Absolute
yes, we would.
strangers.
And not just downtown. I remember walking through the mall, and there was a stage set up in the food court.
Oh, really?
Yes, there was a stage, and nobody was on it.
Were they getting ready to set up Truth or Date?
I don't know what was happening. I just know there was a stage, and we walked halfway past it, and then we both simultaneously stopped, and we did a double take, and we said, oh, the comic possibilities.
Yep.
And then we got up and we just started performing for the food court.
And but not our own stuff.
Oh, no, of course not. No. We did the parrot sketch, and a favorite of ours was some Bronson Pinchot and some other guy stand up.
Yeah.
We did that James Bond sketch.
Yeah, where he's like, he's just on the tee the whole time.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, don't take it. Stop. You'll chip the rim, you stupid. You get your finger in and get all burnt.
My name is Bond. James Bond. But you can call me Jimmy. They were talking about Casino Royale.
Yeah.
The original Casino Royale, the Peter Sellers
that was really
Casino
weird,
Royale, which we had not seen at that point, and we didn't know what they were referencing. But my God, if we didn't think that sketch was just the
we thought it was funny
anyway.
Because in the 90s, just being a gay character when you yourself were not gay was all the comedy you needed. Was all the funny that there needed to be. So just the idea, in our minds, I assume that just the idea that James Bond, rough, rugged, womanizing James Bond was a sissy. We thought that was funny. And then there was keep in mind we were 16.
And then there was that whole like down.
Yeah. And didn't we do that? Didn't we audition at Medieval Fair with that?
No, that was original material that we wrote on the morning.
Very Python-esque though. Yes.
Yes. That, as I recall, we auditioned for the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art, Sarasota Medieval Fair.
Don't go into too much detail. There might be something about it in that box.
Oh, and we were meant to have a sketch because it's very, very improv heavy. We actually took improv classes as part of preparation for this fair.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, you can edit this out, but do you remember Shannon and Dean from the Medieval Fair?
Shannon and Dean?
Yeah, they were a couple.
Oh, and Dean.
Yeah, Shannon.
Was Dean
Shannon Connolly
was Dean severely older than Shannon? Like
No.
disgustingly older?
No.
Okay, then I'm thinking of someone else.
Dean Bowen and Shannon Connolly from the Medieval Fair.
Sorry.
Well, they've just moved to Atlanta.
Oh, well, if I remember them, that would be good.
Well, you don't remember them.
Are they cool? Like,
yeah. Actually, Dean and I were on the front page of the entertainment section of the newspaper together, having a lightsaber duel in front of the Hollywood 20 when Phantom Menace came out.
Don't remember, dude.
So anyway, so we're auditioning for the Medieval Fair.
Oh, that's right. We did. Oh my God. I just fucking popped into my head. I remember now getting up at like 6.
Oh yeah.
Because we had to be
early.
there. We had to take a bus.
No, you drove.
I drove. I was driving by that. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, we had to be there. But we didn't. Now why? Okay. We're going off topic, but get ready because that's going to happen a lot. Why the fuck didn't we do it like an old chestnut? Like, why didn't we take one of our old sketches that, even if it was one of ours, like why did we feel the need to write something that morning hastily? Obviously it worked. I remember people laughing.
Yeah. I think we, decided it should be something medieval.
Was it?
Yeah. You remember here's the sketch. We come up.
How come I only ever remember our shit?
We actually wrote this for our aborted sketch comedy for Jet Boots for America.
We did rework it for Jet Boots.
But we came out and we said, "Ladies and gentlemen, be prepared to be amazed. We have traveled the world, learning our craft, honing it." And of course, I'm
right.
Paraphrasing.
Right.
I don't remember this fucking thing. But we we said, we did this big vaudevillian intro.
Right.
And then said, we are jugglers. And then I pull out these knives and we turn and face each other like jugglers. And I'm getting
knives?
Yeah. And I'm getting ready to
The fuck did we get knives?
to toss them to you like juggling. And you went, wait! And then we come together like, I didn't practice any of this, did you? No, I thought you practiced. And so then I dropped the knives and we turned in unison again and go, ha! Ladies and gentlemen. And we start again with a new spiel and a new like thing that we do. And we did it like 3 times and abandoned each. I think
And the third
one of
time-
them was going to be that we're like acrobats. And you go whoop and you go down on one knee and put your fingers together like you're going to give me a boost up, and same thing happened. And then at the end we do the whole spiel again and we go, we are beggars, and we fall to our knees and just start begging for money.
That's funny.
It's a fucking good
That's funny.
sketch.
Considering that we
still think-
fucking wrote it like
that morning. We
yeah.
wrote it and memorized it
We had to
that
memorize
morning.
it, yeah.
We rehearsed it in the car on the way.
Dude, the motivation that we fucking had in those days. It took me forever to get here today.
I don't know if maybe we didn't realize we were supposed to perform a sketch until rereading the posting.
That's possible. Yeah. But what did we think we were going to have to do? If not perform a sketch?
I don't know, man.
Here, I have only 2 memories of that actual day. The first memory is that's where we met your then girlfriend, Jasmine.
My much later girlfriend.
Yes. And the other one was some guy had a audition about being the guy on the microphone at the Kmart, and he kept drifting off into a fantasy about being a knight, and then he would come back to it, and he would whatever. And then so he looks at me at one point and starts doing like Romeo and Juliet or something to me, and pretending like I'm his beau or whatever, and I took my hair out and just let him and like tell me more about my eyes, all that stuff. And it got a laugh that wasn't intended. He was not making a joke at that part. He was, going back and forth. And
You got a laugh.
I got a laugh.
instead of
He
him.
didn't. Right.
Yeah.
Those are the only things I remember from that day.
So when you said that, I suddenly remembered it.
Oh, yeah.
Until you said that about the hair, I will admit freely that I didn't remember anybody else's auditions at all. If you told me that everyone came just to watch us, that would fit my memory pretty well.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is a pretty egotistical memory because I don't remember what his bit was about. I'm guessing based on the part that involved me that I remember.
And it's not like there were a ton of people there. I feel like if you showed up and you got up and were able to say things in front of people without puking, you were in.
Yeah, that's true.
We well overdid our audition.
So I guess that's still about Python, right? We're talking about the sketch stuff.
I mean, it was a very Python influenced sketch.
And there were definitely, and anyone watching this who currently works Ren
Or
Fair,
listening to this.
who currently works at Ren Fair, like the lovely, I'm sure, I haven't been to a Ren Fair in years, but I'm sure there are every bit as many fucking Python dorks walking up to the actors saying, Holy Grail quotes now as there were when we were kids.
Oh, yes.
It was like if I had let it, it would really like turn me off of Python. Because it was a lot. There's nothing worse than unfunny people quoting funny stuff.
Yeah.
And that's all, that's one of the things you have to deal with if you work in a medieval fair as an actor is the office jackass coming up to you with a fucking Dick Van Dyke accent going, could I have some meat? Hello? Just shut up.
Yeah.
So,
What is your favorite color? Shut the fuck up.
my favorite color is fuck you. Let's see. So did you watch,
Yep.
good night, everybody. Did you watch in 2014 when Python did its last show at the O2?
Maybe? I don't know.
Well, if if you haven't, and to all...
Wait, is
Python
that the one
fans-
with Eddie Izzard?
Yes.
Yes, of course I did.
Yes.
And they had the
kangaroo and...
the urn.
Yeah, for Graham.
Yeah.
Well, that was... The urn was...
On a talk show.
That was... And Mike and Marion Peters were in the audience there.
Oh, wow.
Because that was the Aspen Comedy Festival where they met Trey and Matt.
But the Eddie Izzard was dressed as a fairy, right?
He was... Eddie was there, but... No, I think you're thinking of the... They did a Best of Python night for BBC Two. And they shot new sketches to put around these documentaries and stuff. And Eddie does show up as a fairy.
Yeah, because I didn't know who he was then.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or she?
Well, he's a she now, yeah,
Yes.
actually, yeah.
So
he was a he then.
I didn't know who she was at that point.
Yeah.
It's so confusing because she wants to be she, but not changing the name.
Right.
Nope, still Eddie.
Why can't you just... It's Edie. Edie is a woman's name.
Yeah.
It's one letter.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Just drop the D. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah. I wasn't going to interrupt. I knew you were going to make that joke, and it was a good one. Why interrupt when...
Hey, I didn't know I was going to make it until it came out.
It's a good joke. Yeah, so...
Speaking of
to
coming out.
anyone who, if you haven't seen it yet, the show at the O2, but all those things I just mentioned that you thought it was, bear something in common. Every time I would see something new of Python, over the years, I watch it like with Space Jam, you're gonna watch it.
Yeah.
But there's always this worry, do they still fucking have it? And every time
They still fucking
they
have it.
still have it. They
Yeah.
could start tomorrow, even though Terry and Graham are gone. They could still do something funny today.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, an Empire run, didn't we?
what's that from? Daily Show?
Yeah, and when I say the Daily Show, I mean Craig
Daily Show.
Kilborn's Daily Show with the 5 questions.
3 questions. 3 questions.
5 questions, John Cleese. First question, go. Why is British food so bad?
Well, we had an empire to run, didn't we? By the way, just for the record, British food does not suck.
No, British food is very good. I mean, British food has gotten very good.
It's a bit samey, but
you know what? I told my wife the other day, you know what? I think I will make a shepherd's pie soon. And she was like, oh my God, I was just thinking about your shepherd's pie the other day.
oh, you have a shepherd's pie recipe that is like McBee's famous.
I mean, I just kind of wing it. I don't have a recipe I follow. I just know how to make shepherd's pie, and I fucking do it. And I've started making it with Beyond Meat, and so Jessica and I can enjoy it equally. Now I'm not into the vegan cheese.
Have you ever made it
I
with-
have to separate it.
Have you ever made it with spam?
Absolutely not.
Spam. You have a spam burn on your chest.
I have 3rd-degree burns that I received from cooking spam when I was a child. Luckily, you can't really see it so much anymore, but you know what? Going to the hospital over spam will turn you off of eating spam even more than eating spam will.
I bet, yeah. That was, and we mentioned in one of our earlier episodes too. We did recreate the spam sketch for our local
Bloody
radio station.
Vikings.
Also a great line.
Yeah.
I mean, it.
Well, that's why I love Python. I love the way that it's so. A lot of people associate Python with being, and it's wrong, with being like, oh, it's the 60s, everything's fun and crazy. There's probably a lot of improvising. There's only one sketch in all of the original Flying Circus that is improvised. Do you know which one?
No.
So it's a wonderful sketch.
Is it wink, wink, nudge, nudge?
No, you couldn't improvise that if you tried.
That's the thing. Is I don't know how anyone that thinks that shit is largely improvised has never improvised.
Has never had to written or write.
Like, there are things
never had
you
to
can fake improvisation pretty well.
Oh yeah, they do it on Who's Line all the time.
Ha ha! Oh man, I wish I had my badum button working.
Well, we'll fix it in post.
Oh wait.
Yay!
I just had to turn the speaker up so the mics catch it a little bit. But no, I mean, like, things like The Office, you often can't tell what's scripted and what's improv. Because there's a
Right.
lot of improv in there.
Yes.
But I can't think of a single thing on Python that I can remember. You remember it much better than I do. I mean, you have trouble remembering where your sentence began, but you can quote all of Flying Circus front to back.
I have a weird...
I can't think of a single thing in the entire run of that show that feels improvised.
So here it is, and maybe you will feel differently now that you know it's improvised. So one day they're shooting out in the suburbs somewhere, and they've got an extra hour of light.
Entire funniest joke ever told sketch.
How great would that be? But it was I forget which episode and which sketch it was. I used to know, but they were out, shooting, with the crew and everything. They've got the costume van is out there and everything. BBC van is out there. And they had something like an extra hour or something before they had to do something else, and they'd gotten finished early. And so Michael's just in a regular suit, and John goes to the truck and puts on a officer's outfit, a policeman's outfit.
I know the one, actually. It's, excuse me, sir. Someone's just taking my wallet with a £10.50. That one?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. Did you see anyone take it? Anyone sort of hanging around? Or
I don't remember the sketch. I can't.
No, there's no one there who told us trouble. Well, not very much we can do about that, sir. You can see, knowing that it's improvised, you can see in Michael's head.
Don't get a drink.
He just goes, come back to my place, please.
Yeah, all right.
that was so, and it worked so well that they ended up using that as the end to the parrot sketch in a lot of live performances.
Yes.
And I remember one of the interviews that I watched a lot when we were still in high school with Cleese. I remember one day, this is before I drove, this is coming home on the bus, and running just to make it, because I knew that it was A&E was going to be showing this thing about Cleese, a biography on Cleese. And he talks about that sketch, and he says, that's why I love that sketch so much. He goes, because knowing the writing process and knowing how we were and how, if it wasn't hilarious, it went into the shit pile. But seeing it finished, he goes, it wouldn't have survived. Like, if someone wrote it, it wouldn't have survived. The only reason it ever existed is because we improvised it and we had something finished. I'm like, oh, that's done. That's good. But yeah, they're not improvisers by any means.
And yeah, I just, you brought up the parrot sketch, and I want to bring up.
It's going to come up.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah.
And I want to bring up, it's really the perfect sketch to illustrate the mindset of Python. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people may not know, but it is an adaptation of a previous sketch.
Yeah.
It started as a sketch
car.
about a car.
Mm-hmm.
A car. This car is broken. You sold me a faulty car. And then somehow they go, what if it was a parrot?
I mean, so much funnier.
The insanity of like, oh, you sold me a lemon that's a parrot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. To rework a sketch about a car into a sketch about a parrot takes a certain...
It's Graham.
Beautiful mind.
That's Graham. And Graham, I'm sure if they were all here, the other Pythons would agree that Graham would have been the most beautiful mind of the group, because Graham easily contributed the least. And Cleese was famously said, because when he had success with Fawlty Towers, people in the very misogynistic world that we were living in back then said, when they heard that Cleese and his wife wrote it, well, how much did Connie Booth really write? And he always wanted to say, well, a bloody lot more than fucking Graham ever did. And it was true. But the reason why the Pythons never had a problem with Graham's minimal contribution is because it was stuff like that, where it's like you have this finished sketch, the premise and everything is worked out, but Graham just goes, what if it was a parrot?
Now, I have this vision in my head, and I don't know if it's because it's the way the story was told at some point, or because it's just how I've always pictured it.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll be able to fill me in, but I always pictured them writing, and Graham would be in the corner in a leather overstuffed chair with a pipe.
That's about right.
And he would just be sitting there silently, and then would just pipe up with
You are literally visually describing how Cleese and Graham wrote The Magic Christian for Peter Sellers. They went to Ibiza and they're in a hotel and John's at the typewriter and Graham is sunbathing, shouting suggestions from the
Yeah, that's how I've always pictured.
That's their relationship.
Graham's contribution.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's fine,
but
because when you're shouting out gems,
yeah,
it's worth, because he's doing just as much work as everybody. Yeah. He's just filtering himself. Mm-hmm. Instead of throwing out the shitty ideas, he's going, no, that's shit. No, that's shit.
Yeah,
oh, here's
exactly
one.
Right. In fact, best line in one of our favorite sketches is the two pepper pots with the penguin on TV. What's the best line in that sketch?
And now it's time for the penguin on top of your television to explode.
No.
Okay.
Burma!
What did you say, Burma?
I panicked. So Burma, and if you look back at the sketch too, they look away from each other right afterwards because they're
laughing.
Because it was one of the only times they fucking went like 20 takes. It was take after take after take. But that was literally they're writing, and all of a sudden Cleese has the line, why did you, what was the line? They don't come from Antarctica, they come from the Antarctic. And then Graham just said, Burma! And Cleese, why did you say Burma? I panicked. I had to say something, and that's why it's in there, because he gave you this solid gold of whatever it was. And it only worked with John too. Eric has stories, and I think Michael has stories of trying to write with Graham, and it's literally, well, I went over to his house and we went, want to go in the garden? All right. And then like after 4 hours of just kind of quietly chit-chatting, well, I've got to go and write with the other boys. 4 hours, right. And then they didn't write anything because he didn't have anything, because Cleese was the engine.
Eric,
yeah. Eric was the solo.
Yeah, Eric's sketches always seem like Eric.
Mm-hmm. And they're very wordy.
In the sketch comedy that you and I have done, when I read through the scripts, I definitely know which ones are yours. Mm-hmm. Always. And not because I remember them. I don't remember anything.
Because of the Eric ones? Because they sound like Eric?
Well, because they're typically a newscaster. You're a big fan of newscasters talking to the camera.
No, I'm not. I'm a big fan of Python sketches where newscasters address the camera.
Yes, and I remember bringing that up to you Trevor, can you write something that isn't Python, please?
But the thing that you didn't...
And then you would always be like, why write not Python if you can write Python?
It's a good point, actually. And also, I was sitting there like, we're not...
So you're not a derivative shithead.
I was just like, well, what do you got, Sean? Do you have something that's not derivative? And you didn't.
I mean...
What I remember with the Python criticism was, my attitude was, look, Cleese is on record as saying that when he started, everything he did was a parody. And the only reason he fucking knew what a parody was is because he saw someone else parody. And I'm like, look, we're not at their level. So let's just not fucking bullshit ourselves and pretend that we're not, we're at that first year college thing that he's talking about.
I just wanted you to branch out more. So many newscasters, man.
I'm sure it wasn't easy to have me as your writing partner. I'm not saying, it was hunky-dory. But at the same time, it was like, what else are we going to do? We don't have any other influences. We're 18, And it's amazing that we got Python, to be honest. It's amazing that at 18, we knew that this was something special.
And younger.
And younger, true, yeah. In my case, 14, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I was 14 when I saw Splitting Hairs. Did nothing for me, except for the ass.
Yeah.
Did a lot for me. Did a lot for me.
Eric Idle has a great ass, you're right.
A lot of mileage out of it.
and it's also one of Rick Moranis' more underrated performances.
See, I didn't even remember he was in that.
You forgot he was in that?
I barely remember Catherine Zeta-Jones other than her ass being in it. I just remember her swimming and her getting out of the pool.
You have no idea how much I wish Splitting Hairs was on a Calvin ball in here. So we had to figure out, just talk bullshit. Well, she was in it and Cleese was in it and there was a movie in the early 90s.
Yeah, I barely remember the rest of her. I should watch Splitting Hairs.
It's a good movie. It is.
I'm sure it is. Also, A Fish Called Wanda.
You haven't seen it?
Oh, I've seen it. That was one that I appreciated more.
Oh.
Because I think there was, The what's his face?
Michael Palin,
No,
Cleese,
Kevin Kline
And
was
Jamie
in
Lee Curtis.
it to Americanize it a little bit. So I related to it more. So, even back renting VHS tapes from my local pharmacy. Yeah, kids, that was a thing. We had a pharmacy where you rented videos.
And they were never
Far
good.
more.
They were never good videos either.
Far more is where I saw like Chopping Mall. I remember.
Oh, really?
Always, I didn't see it.
Wait.
We didn't rent it.
I know, but wait, they had it in a fucking pharmacy chopping mall?
Yeah, well, okay, so
It's an R-rated movie.
I don't know if you remember Farmore, but it was like this huge. It was PHAR, like pharmacy.
I remember pharmacies having video stores.
This was not like a CVS. It was like, you remember the Books A Million on
The Gulf Gate Mall.
Tamiami? No, not Books A Million. Sorry, the Borders. Remember how there was the
Yes.
Borders like right down the road from the Barnes and Noble?
Yes.
That Borders, the whole thing used to be this store called Farmore back in the 80s. And it was like a grocery store / pharmacy, and they had a video store in the back. Like a whole video store.
Oh, not just like a row of shelves?
Right.
Okay.
It's like a whole video rental.
Because the pharmacies I'm remembering were that. Just
The
a shelf.
videos were $1. I don't know if it was $1 for 3 days or $1 a day, but it was $1 to rent. We rented all our movies there because we were poor, and even we could swing $1.
Yeah.
And I remember every time we went there, I would see this movie Chopping Mall on the shelf, and I would
You
be
never
like,
watched it?
I'd be like, that's funny. I've seen it now.
Okay.
Because
I
it was on How
gonna
Did This
say,
Get
you need
Made?
to see it. It's actually, it's entertaining.
Yeah. Mac and Me, we rented there.
Oh, I hate that fucking movie so much.
Yeah, because you have eyes.
Yeah. But also, like, I don't know, I don't want to talk. I want to get on a diatribe about that fucking.
So yeah. I could talk all day about renting movies at the Farmore.
Too bad there's not a Calvin ball in there that says that.
It's so weird, just like thinking about how different our life was. Like when we met, not our life, but like the world.
Mm-hmm.
The world has changed so much just since you and I met. Probably because you and
You're
I met.
welcome.
I like that we both went there in different
Yeah.
ways. But like when you and I met, who the fuck had the internet?
Actually, we did.
In 1993? We met first day of high school.
I guess we would have been in 95.
95 is when most people got the internet because that's when Windows 95 came
true.
out.
Yeah.
And that was very internet focused. That was like the real. I mean,
Okay,
before.
so when we met, there was no internet.
I mean, there was internet, but like who had it? Nobody
Matthew
had it.
Broderick.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick and Whoopi Goldberg.
Yep,
They had
that's
the corner on the entirety of the internet.
That's right.
You get a lot of War Games references, not so much on the Jumpin' Jack Flash. No one
No.
seems to talk about that movie.
Which is a shame.
Is there a
because
Calvin ball on Jumpin' Jack Flash?
There should be.
I mean, I haven't seen it since the 80s.
I haven't. I think the only scene I remember from it is where she got her dress caught in the fucking paper shredder.
I don't even remember that. I just remember vaguely there being some internet in it.
Oh.
And of course, at that point, if the internet was
Oh,
in
I know
something,
we can talk about.
it was focused on the internet.
Do you remember the Monty Python's Complete Waste of Time?
No,
The CD-ROM game?
definitely not.
In true Python fashion, it was. But it was funny, but like it's not until you get like 3-4 hours into playing it that you realize, oh, there's no end to this game.
Remind me, there was a video that was not Python, but it had many of the Pythons, and I think Peter Cook. Maybe.
There was
And I remember a sketch from it, and when I tell you the sketch, you'll be able to tell me exactly what the tape was.
assuming can't do that already.
Attention passengers, this is your pilot speaking. There is no cause for alarm.
How to irritate people. And
That's it.
And that was
It was John Cleese's How to Irritate People.
and that's where with the original version of the parrot sketch premiered, was how to irritate people. It was
That was before Python? Oh.
That's where they took it from, was How to Irritate People. They did that with a couple of their sketches. There's actually, I want to say 2 sketches, if not 1 or 2 more that have starts, but there's a sketch where Tim Brooke Taylor in How to Irritate People goes to Cleese to be interviewed for a job, and Cleese just keeps doing all sorts of silly stuff to get weird, like ringing bells and going, good night, ding, 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 ding. I don't know what to do when you do that. Well, do something. 5, 4, 3. Good, very good. And then they did it again, line for line in Flying Circus with Graham. But the Peter Cook was not in that. The one that you're thinking of that they did with Peter Cook was where we got the wonderful.
Are you still thinking, or are you just dead?
The Down the Mines monologue.
Oh, yes.
And that was from Dead Parrot Society.
Yes, Dead Parrot Society, I remember.
Which was a collection of British comedy. And yes, it was everybody. They had clips from a Secret Policeman's Ball performance where
the Secret Policeman's Ball. That's what I was
They
thinking.
took a number of famous courtroom sketches, many of them Python sketches, and just sewed them together into one big court scene. And, and so my favorite, Peter Cook was the actual, the guy in the witness box, not in the witness, but, the guy who they're
defending,
the criminal. Yeah. And I remember the one line that they actually added that was for that was when it's all over and he pleads. He goes, well,
I did it.
Them, the murders. But as you're all so looking forward to this, I thought I'd plead not guilty. Oh.
So there's a real brilliant part right before that, which is what made me just involuntarily laugh while you were talking.
Was what?
And that's when they read off the charges, and it's this insane laundry list
that he murdered.
of murders, and then there's a pause, and he goes, "Order about the evening of."
Yeah, all in one fucking go. So then there was that, and there was I wonder if we should talk about Secret Policeman's Ball, because that's still going on, and Cleese started it.
Really?
Yeah, he was the
Where
one.
can I find all of it?
I mean, they do them every couple of years.
Where can I find all of it?
I Googled the Secret Policeman's Ball. I mean, I'm sure you can.
All right, we're done here.
Okay, good night.
I got shit to look up.
Yeah.
Bye. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're done.
This is like the ending of Holy Grail. Just
that's the show.